I'm very happy to be with you with Cultural Up Europe on the topic of solidarity, which for my practice is a major theme for all my life, how to cope with this challenge of solidarity in contemporary world. So I will speak not necessarily in the direct context of the crisis we face today with solidarity, thinking about environmental crisis and pandemic. This is a situation when we really start to think how solidarity is important and the problems we have with lack of solidarity today. But I was engaged in thinking and practicing of culture of solidarity years ago. And so I will start to talk how I understand solidarity and why it matters, and especially versus culture today. But at the same time, I will try to give some new lines of understanding how we can follow this challenge today in daily practices, in something what we call culture of solidarity. So my perspective, I would like to depart from for this conversation is solidarity at the core, at the heart of the whole discourse, the whole narrative, which is by itself a small rebellion. It's because it's changing perspective to put solidarity at the very center of what we think about culture today. And I'm following the way of the authors of the book published by you, Dorota Ogrodzka and Igor Czyzewski, about culture and solidarity. They took this perspective from solidarity to culture and to other dimensions of our life. So the first thing I want to underline is that it matters that we will position solidarity at the very center of our thinking and activities. There is a famous verse by Czesław Miłosz from his moral treaty. Important is the point from which you are looking to the world, and changing this point of view matters. So, and from that point, from the solidarity point, I will speak about how it relates to the culture, to the artistic activities, and so on. I decided not to read anything. I didn't prepare a paper. I will not even lean on notes and not use visual attributes. I decided to have with you a kind of thinking meditation about these new ideas and challenges. So rather join to your open source philosophy as an introduction, although I will end up with some concrete propositions about possible institutions or new ideas concerning building a concrete organization frameworks, because this is also, I think, how the idea of solidarity can influence our cultural life, not only with ideas, not only with daily practices, but also how we think about the institution, cultural institution, and cultural education in general. So starting, why was solidarity at the very core of my work since so many years, already 30 now. Of course, I'm a child of solidarity movement in Poland and Central Eastern Europe. And the question in 1989 for us, artists, cultural practitioners, were how to put into the practice the ideas of solidarity movement, which we all were engaged in. And you see, at that time, the solidarity was understood on the line with gaining freedom and gaining independence. So as a struggle with the regime, the communist regime, and struggle for democracy. So we needed solidarity to gain freedom. So solidarity was something like an instrument, like a mobilization for gaining something more important and crucial for us at that time, which was national independence and sovereignty and new democratic Poland. So we deal with solidarity in that pattern of independence and freedom. And because of that, we paid the price of losing solidarity after 1989 in social, in interhuman relationships. That was suddenly a completely new situation, which we didn't know from our historical experience. We already, mobilized ourselves as a community to fight for freedom. And it was the fate of many generations, not the communist time, but before the war in the 19th century. It was the fate of Poland, but many other Central Eastern European countries. The freedom was at the very core, and the way how we understood culture was very much along this dream of freedom, independence, and sovereignty. But we didn't have the experience of being free and thinking about solidarity or concentrating on solidarity, which is more social, more interhuman, more on the daily level between people and communities. And that was that challenge, which we invented this word, borderland, for our foundation and center, which is like Maria at the beginning. It was very typical and common, misuse of this term. Maria said borderline foundation, and very often the word pogranicze is translated as a borderline, but it is not the borderline, it is the borderland. Which says something about the difference between two. And then borderland is something really to differ one from another, to design the border between differences and so on. The borderland is the word in the way of the same meaning as solidarity. So it was our word for solidarity in this new situation, borderland, which means living together with different people on the same land, in the same community. So borders are rather inside the community. They are real, and there are real differences, but you live together. That's very much about the borderland. So you are, the life makes you the bridge builder in a very natural way, because otherwise the life is unbearable. The bridge is not to eliminate borders, but rather to connect, to bridge and to build something in common, what you may say, called connective tissue. Among us. So pogranicze, the borderland, was a solidarity word. And it was in the historical cultural context of this part of Europe, it was used as a replacement of the word crest, edges, which was very much about territories which once belonged to Polish Republic, but today belongs to Belarus, Ukraine, Lithuania, our eastern neighbors. So the crest was the word to be connected with our Polish culture, ancestors living in that territories. But this term crest was hard to accept for our neighbors, because for them it meant the domination of Polish state, of Polish culture, of Polish language, assimilation of our languages to the most powerful one at that time, and so on. So to say I'm the borderlander, it was to say I'm engaging in rebuilding all these bridges and rebuilding the connections between different people after many conflicts, traumatic memories, clashes, and so on. So, but this is our Central European context for much broader, which I now want to invent and to put to our discussion, which is saying that our life on Earth had different periods and epochs, and now we are on the threshold. We humankind, we people doing culture, on the threshold of a new paradigm of cultural civilization, which is like a shift between I, or from the first person singular to you, the second person singular. And it was before the period, the third person singular, it was dominant. Ancient Greece, and the civilization was domination of something what is beyond our knowledge, and the other, which is an objective truth, and the spiritual energy, and so on. But after that, there became this period of I as dominant in our philosophy, culture, and so on. The Cartesian I, ego, which builds from itself the space of the dominance of I, my freedom, my free individual expression, my independence, my sovereign national state, national identity, and some other sharp identities which we created along this. And on that pattern, on that paradigm, the modernity was developed, and culture was very much involved in that. Now, and this is a feeling, an understanding of, for example, philosophers of dialogue like Martin Buber, or Emanuel Levinas, or Polish philosopher and priest Józef Tischner, to understand that today we face a new epoch, a new culture and paradigm of culture, which will more and more be focused on you as a dominant for our life. And of course, it will be not happening overnight. It will take centuries, probably. This is a process, but when I started to be engaged in borderland, I saw many signs at that moment that we are on that direction, heading on that direction with ecology, with thinking about solidarity, with thinking about new type of culture, which will be more for social change, social engagement, and so on. It demands from us, to think, not to be focused on my personal freedom as an artist, which was in the previous time, under communist regime, was my virtue, to be free as thinker, as artist, with my expression and with my life in the country. But when only we established a center in 1990 in a small town, we started to thinking rather about interdependence, about how to be involved in the community life and how to have culture as a connective tissue for community building. And it changed our workshop, our laboratory of culture. You needed new tools, new ideas, new philosophy for that. So this is the point of departure, how I understand solidarity. So, of course, all these, what we face today in terms of crisis, of pandemic, or environment, and so on, matters. But there is something, but my way of thinking about solidarity is not this negative, to react on the crisis. It's something very positive in that, at the background, that we heading on this line from I to you. And this is the natural development of our humankind way. And probably, through you, we will come back to it, to the objective reality, and probably we will come back to ourselves, to I. But we need this adventure, this risk of empathy, responsibility for the whole, sacrificing our individual freedoms in the purpose of common, and in the purpose of responsibility for the whole, not only for our milieu, or our interests, or our identity, and so on. So that's the point of departure. And how, thinking about that, how I understand solidarity is, because that there is a dark side of solidarity too. It could be, very much about solidarity with my people, which we also face today. And when you have this crisis of relationships between communities, peoples, and so on, more and more, and because of fear, because of the outside pressure to care about my people and to understand solidarity in the narrow terms. But of course, I'm sure this is not the way we are going to understand solidarity. It's very much for me close to this Indian term, ahimsa, which the virtue of non-violence transforms into action, practice of compassion and solidarity with every living being on the earth, including plants, stones, and any epiphany of living beings. So there is no other solidarity, in fact, than solidarity with everybody, with all. Think about solidarity as hospitality. There are no limits for hospitality. if you think about the virtue at your home of hospitality, you don't keep anything for yourself in the refrigerator. You are offering everything. And you don't think about the particular kinds of host you will have, and you will be hospitable to. If there is a hospitality, in truth, it is for everybody. And of course, there are life limitations and obstacles and aporias in our lives that we should give up our hospitality because it's beyond our capacities. And I know such situations in life. But then stop talking about hospitality. Let's talk about some projects, some pragmatic resolutions for the problems. But when we are starting to think about hospitality, don't keep anything for yourself in the refrigeration. This is also about solidarity. So it is ahimsa in that terms of trying to embrace every body, every life being. And of course, you may say it is beyond our possibilities. It's something, demanding too much. It's not of the human's capacity. But I would say, I like very much once what Polish intellectual and sociologist Piotr Osietiński said. I'm a feminist because my dream is of the world of truly equal people. So I'm becoming feminist. Becoming feminist means that I cross my border of gender, of culture, something toward other banks. So sometimes in my life, I was pushed, it was very natural to say I'm Jewish. Although my origin is not Jewish, and the Orthodox rabbi will, argue with me, saying, I had nothing to do with Jewishness. But when I was, pushed by the situation of some anti-Semitic reaction and so on, I tended to say, I'm with you. I'm a Jew too, like Tsvetaeva said once about poets, we are all Jews. So the solidarity in that terms means very much that you cross your band of your identity, of your belongings, of your home threshold, and so on. And this is starting not from the end of this absolute, for everybody, but starting from crossing your limitations toward a concrete people you are living or coexist with them, and you are empathic. Means you are crossing yourself something. So solidarity for me is the borders, and it's very much about the art of building bridge, which never happens when you feel that you yourself are on the right bank and all other people should join you. That's not the way you build a bridge. But I believe that very often we do this mistake in our liberal democracies, that we have these feelings that we have right and we are on the right bank of the river. And other people, and it's only a question of time when they will join us. We should educate them, we should, do many things that they will cross the river and build the bridge toward us. That's not the solidarity way of building the bridge. You should, from your side, cross your bank as well. Otherwise, there is no opportunity to meet and build a bridge. And what I like also about the solidarity understanding is what Zygmunt Bauman once said when he was deeply dissatisfied about what's happening. This anti-austerity movement, which was the, festival of solidarity, quickly disappeared. We were engaged all in the barricades and manifesting solidarity, but it had a short life afterwards. And from that perspective, he said something like that: "Do you want solidarity? If so, face and come to grips with the routine of the mundane, with its logic and inanity, with the powers of its demands, commands, and prohibitions." I like this word mundane, which is at the same time daily, earthly, but embracing the worldwide view and global perspective or activity. Mundane. So solidarity is very much about dealing with coping with mundane challenges in our life. So referring to what Henryk Krzywonos, one of the workers of Gdańsk shipyard and the leader of Polish Solidarity, said that there are two types of solidarity. One is great solidarity, on the government level and power level, and a small solidarity, which is focused on daily things, human interrelations, help just excluded people or persecuted by regime and so on. She develops this kind of help. There was a small solidarity in the big solidarity movement. So versus culture, there's this dimension of small solidarity is another rebellious thing of building the culture of solidarity. It challenges us to come down to the ground, to the real people, to small things, to daily life, and build this culture of solidarity on that level. So having this at the core of my thinking about solidarity as culture of rebellion, how I would think about culture versus solidarity, how this view of solidarity influence the culture, practices, ideas, and where you think about it. Culture itself has these problems as solidarity has. So it could be our culture. And culture in general has problems with solidarity. Zygmunt Bauman once said that it is the culture is not enough hospitable for solidarity, because we close culture to the sometimes very narrow identities connected to nationalities, religions, languages, cultures, and so on. So there is, we even may say about intercultural dialogue or some activities we do for exchange of cultures and so on. But subconsciously, we understand culture sometimes. I'm sorry for generalizing it now, but we think as a close unit, which should negotiate with other close units. So Polish culture with Lithuanian or French cultures, and we have all industry, all laboratory machinery of national institute, propagating national cultures. And we in Europe very often understand culture as a dominium of national states. In fact, it's a dominant perspective to that. This is not the way we should understand culture from the perspective of solidarity. And it's changing, facing deeply the way we understand culture, and very much goes along the philosophy of Jan Assmann, this Egyptologist who started to doing research or pre-monotheistic religion in ancient Egypt, and started to use this term anti-religion toward the monotheistic religions like Judaism, later on Christianity and others. Why? Because it came with this concept of having our own religions and as an absolute right and different from the others, or having the absolute truth on our side, not the others. And we started to close religion around these boundaries of having right and having others outside this milieu of religion. For the pre-monotheistic religion like ancient Egypt, there was no type of understanding of religion. It was when you enter the space of religion, of sacrum, it means that you leave all the boundaries behind you. You are entering something in common. And it's not very ancient in terms, of belonging to the ancient civilization. I'm telling you about that because this is my experience of working with people on the overlands in different continents. I still experience to meet people who understand the religion and culture in general in that terms as an absolute openness and leaving on the boundaries behind you. When you enter the space of sacrum or in general of culture, there is no place for divisions because you are entering, towards something what is common. I think we have problems with this way of understanding of culture as something that unites rather than divides. And thinking about culture from that perspective of solidarity, opening this horizon of understanding culture as something very going toward unity and common space of coexistence, of belonging to. So if we think about culture of solidarity like that, what we can do or what fields of understanding we can invent to open culture from inside. It's not very much about opening it to the other cultures, which is also important. This cross-cultural dialogue is absolutely important, and I'm not about eliminating all these differences, but to think about culture, being open from inside and having different scope for naming things as mine, as belonging to me, as common. There is a very famous, I hope you know this movie by Rykonski, The Cold War. And there is a small episode in the beginning of that film when you have a situation of artists, composers who are building a folk local ethnographic music group and starts to organize expeditions to different traditional regions like Lemko people, which are, the special national minority group in Poland, close to the Ukrainian one. And they have this polyphonic, beautiful way of singing, which is rare in Poland because we are rather, have a monophony and in singing. And they are fascinated by these songs and sharing it, traveling in a car, and the driver of that car, and in Kaczmarek, saying, "Oh, such pretty. It's a pity that it is not ours." And to say "not ours," it means to define your identity and who you are. Very much we are Polish, but this is, the local people live centuries together with us in Poland, and they are Polish citizens. But there is something what tend and push us to say this is not ours. And this is a simple thing, but I think very crucial for our understanding of culture, because in this culture of solidarity, I think we will face the process of extending the borders of what is ours, from very narrow to broader, and having legitimacy to say our about some much bigger scope of culture. In general, to feel that it is mine, it is our, it belongs to myself, not to other cultures and other nations, and so on. How it is, this Kaczmarek, it was in communist Poland, and very naturally he did a big career with his concept work, what is ours, and not. There was no way to have Lemko songs in a Polish national choir or dance group, because it was not ours. That was a dominant of Kaczmarek vision, and he became not this artist who had to emigrate to Western Europe, but Kaczmarek became the driver, became the conductor and director of an orchestra. It was in communist regime, but I think we still have this challenge, how we say and use in culture system what is our or not. So culture of solidarity will be very much about extending our understanding and feeling what is truly our, and it costs. It's not easy. For us, we do our activities in our town in northeastern Poland, in former Jewish quarter, among others, a former synagogue. It took us a long way to say about this building, this is our synagogue. Our. How happens? What you should do that it becomes our. And again, you come back. You can't do it without solidarity with the people living there, here, before. With Jewish culture, with Jewish memory, with Jewish tradition, but also Jewish trauma and Shoah. So you should, so to be in solidarity with this heritage, you should become self-critical. You should open some dark chapters in your own history and memories of the communities. So it costs this critical attitude toward remembering our own culture. You will not gain the credibility of saying it is our without deeply empathic work of what was the fate of our neighbors, of people living with us before. What else in context of solidarity versus culture. There is this prefix I like very much, co-creative, cooperation, co-production, co-authorship. I think to open culture toward culture of solidarity, this prefix is of big importance for us. So even I tend sometimes to say, fuck you, CO, to attribute the prefix co in many of your activities and way of thinking. And from one side, it is a good strategy, for creating some good things, artistic education and so on. You need cooperation. You need people who will work with you. But when you go deeply into this code, it becomes, like a very good meditation practice, which somehow is able to free you from yourself and from different limitations you can have. So it is not only a pragmatic, or even philosophical concept that we should do co-creation or co-production in culture, but it means also co-authorship, co-philosophy, co-truth, co-self. What does it mean? That maybe myself, my truth, maybe it's not fully and absolute. So there is no real truth without you, without second person singular. Maybe this is very much about the truth of ourselves, that to gain or to be on the way to a real truth, it is a way of being together with somebody. And because otherwise, there will be no way to be fully ourselves. So it's something more than just this idea of production. That it makes you think differently about who you are, in fact, and what truth is, and what freedom is. And now, because we understood it very often in a very individual way, my freedom, the freedom of individual expression, and so on. There is a way of understanding freedom, like Hans Gadamer, the philosopher, did, saying that I have as much freedom as my neighbor has. What it means that gaining freedom means that I extend the space of freedom of my neighbors, of people I coexist with. So there is a co-freedom. There is no way to go far with achieving the freedom than together with other people. And it may be, in contrary to the way of, believing that, no, I won't be by myself. This is my freedom. When I was engaging in alternative culture, counterculture in the 70s, that was the way how we understood the freedom, and didn't think about, going to the communities and to the people to live together with them. We were thinking about building a community, outside, in alternative, outside of the world, because only there your dream could be fulfilled, when you abandon the people, when you abandon your social environment, context, and so on. This is your freedom. My lesson after 1989 is that there's a different way to bring freedom when you go to the people and you think about your freedom as co-freedom, as something what you can gain together with the others. Maria, I see you.
I'm enjoying your talk. I'm just kind of wanted to show up and say that in a couple of minutes, if we can just let you rest for 10 minutes, that would be perfect. But feel free to take your time.
Exactly. I'm. Thank you for reminding me. I'm very close to the end, which I want to enrich with only two words. One is deep. I will not talk. I have this concept of deep culture. I will not talk about that. But why I use this word deep, which sometimes means controversial for my friends when I invented it, głęboka kultura in Polish. It's too grand, the word. We don't like it. And especially when you think about solidarity, to be and working with the people. Deep is something maybe not to the people. Maybe it's too ambitious. It's maybe for only artistic circles, avant-garde circles, and so on. What it means, in fact, in terms of solidarity, then you don't trust people you work with. That the deep attitude to the work could be for them and together with them. I think it's another aporia we have. Don't touch this, don't go too deeply because it will be not for the people. So the culture of solidarity is very much about trusting the people, that we can go deep together. And in fact, there is no solidarity without profound attitude to that and go deeply to that. And it takes me to the last word that I want to recall, which is beauty. Because when we talk about culture of solidarity, we think a lot about social engagement, doing people, and even sacrificing our artistic individual ambitions for doing something together. But there is no real bridge without beauty. That this capacity of creating beautiful things belonging to artists is crucial for culture of solidarity. There is no culture of solidarity without beauty. And this craft of creating beautiful things in all dimensions of our life, we shouldn't give up in that. Of course, I would say that for me, more and more, it means, at the beginning of my artistic life, it was, my beauty, my dreams, and my capacity of my talent, of doing beautiful things. More and more in time, I'm thinking about making this happen with other people, and digging up from the community, from every person, and coming to Ahimsa, from every person, the capacity of doing beautiful things together with their. So as an activist of culture for solidarity, I don't have this this comfort as an orchestra conductor. In terms that I can say to you, Maria, you are a very good person, but you are not musical one. You don't have these skills in music, so you can't be part of my orchestra because it's professional. I care about the level, quality, and so on. As an artist of culture of solidarity, I don't have this comfort to say to anybody, you are not having capacities to do that. And that's your responsibility, the challenge that you should help and open this space for everybody to be creative in beautiful things. And at the end, I started after, keeping all this in mind, all these small but rebellious things, changing our way of thinking and practicing the culture. The question for me is, how to, put it into the organizational level, and I very much believe that we should think about institutions of culture of solidarity, that this is a challenge of the future for us, that we should create new type of institution, cultural institution. I have this term, small center of the world, that we should focus, to really establish solidarity culture. We should think about polyphony of small centers of the world. And when you take acronym from that, small center of the world, SCOW, you have the word SCO, which is, these small boats when you have a ship too heavy to maneuver and to reach the bank, you send a scows, small boats, light, movable, attentive to new circumstances you are living. Something like that, I think we need in our cultural field. That opens not for new projects, not but for new institutions, which will be small, rooted in concrete communities, movable, attentive to the changes and to the challenges, to the situation, not heavy, not white elephant, big and having problems with maneuvering, but created on a completely new pattern as an institution, employing people, giving them the security, giving them the chance to work on a long durée, on a long term. Because this is another, I didn't mention it, but the time dimension is crucial for the culture of solidarity. You can't do it on short term. You need continuation process of the work over the years. So for that, we need institutions. We are thinking about small solidarity, about the mundane daily things, but think at the same time, because of that, about the institutions, about having, these wise grantees or people we are cooperating to offering us or to convince them that we need support not only for festivals and cultural events. We need support for creating new institutions on that field of culture of solidarity, on that new paradigm. And the last one thing, if you think in that terms, we need also academies. We need schools to teach this craft. We need somehow to feel, and I feel this responsibility too, that I should transform all these ideas into the language of pedagogical practice of a school, of developing the program which will create a new generation of activists, artists of culture of solidarity. Thank you for your attention.
Krysztof, thank you so much for this. Really, I could listen about this, and I think also people who are here with us, for great lengths of time. It really is quite unique and really wonderful to hear about solidarity, what rebellion means, what does, coming together mean, but maybe more about this in our Q&A, we'll give you and everybody 10 minutes break to get some water, coffee, whatever you need to do. And so we meet at 12:21 back for a short Q&A with you until 1 o'clock, if that's okay. And also, I just want to remind everybody that if you have a question, we already are having some coming in. You can write it in a chat and then I'll read it out to Krysztof, or you can just kind of raise your digital hand and then you can speak in the microphone. So 12, 21, 22, we come back and then talk more with, with Krysztof Czyzewski about his keynote speech. Thank you so much once again. I'm going to switch up my camera and see you in 10 minutes. Great. So we're back for Q&A with Krysztof Czyzewski, who had a keynote speech right before about solidarity as rebellion actions, which was really fantastic and inspiring. And so I already had questions, but I'm so happy that people are already posing questions. So I will start with who posed first, and then let's see how everything goes. So we have first question from Gwen, who is sending you greetings from London. And she's, thanking you for a wonderful talk. And so her question is, and I'm quoting, I wonder if you could speak to the role of dialogue in cultivating a culture of solidarity and building bridges. In my organization, Embrace Dialogue, we try to build a culture of dialogue as part of building peace in Colombia. I would love to hear your thoughts on how dialogue can foster solidarity. So that's the first question for you, Krysztof.
Thank you, Gwen. And I know your great work in Colombia of building peace via dialogue and culture. What I can add is, of course, we need the dialogue for culture and solidarity, but the aporia we face, problems very often, is that people are living in hangouts, and the challenge for us very often is to make them be engaged in dialogue, to give them the space, the capacities, the possibilities to even to start a dialogue. Yes, so we need a culture, and sometimes in these previous patterns of culture was, with all these individual, freedom-oriented work, helping to close people in hangouts because we are not belonging, because we are, having not opportunities to be a part of an artistic milieu and so on. To think about the culture as a tool of taking people out of hideouts, not stigmatizing them in any way of, being, for example, xenophobic or anti-Semitic or intolerant or more and more, But having culture as something in the process which helps people come to cross this threshold or withdrawing myself. I fear I don't have capacities and possibilities and even space. For us, very often the question is, do we have space for dialogue? We are close in our entities of our, in my town, it's a minority circle, different minority circle, and so on. We live in our world, yes. So, and we can be invited for dialogue, but sometimes to create a space for dialogue where everybody can feel at home, freely to speak. It is a challenge to have a special space of the of building this tradition of dialogue. So that would be my my thoughts on culture of dialogue, because otherwise, of course, there are different types of moderating and making dialogue possible, and being good moderators and facilitators is another kind of art. But there is a pre-stage of that situation. How make people to come in, to join the dialogue table?
Okay, thank you so much, Krysztof. Gwen, if you have any kind of return question, feel free to comment, and then we can continue the discussion. Otherwise, thank you so much for posing your question, and Krysztof for answering. And so I have one for one of the participants from the lab, who's asking it's kind of a common question. So it says, us and them is different in a village. To us and them is a bit in a big invisible city. So he's thanking you, Mike, if you want to maybe elaborate more, but I kind of interpret this question as, you know, what you were saying, the difference between I and we. And so if you want to maybe comment on that.
Of course, there is, you know, the human condition, circumstances that we live in different villages, yes, and we born in certain quarters, milieus, and so on. All I think is what matters here is to cross, to bridge with the other, to be hospitable in terms of, you know, accepting and inviting the other. So in the permanent way of navigating between different units and borders and so on. There is no way, I think, to annihilate these lines, these villages. But you can make out of them the center, the small center of the world, yes, in my terms, so that you somehow, through the close contacts with neighborhoods, with people who are around you, you open it up, not escaping to the openness, like the way of cosmopolites can do, you know. It was being cosmopolite for the modern world means, you know, I'm leaving you, I'm going to the center, I'm going to having new life, I'm uprooting myself because this village is, you know, too close, you know, too limiting myself and my freedom. So I want to live in cosmopolis, you know, in open space and so on. I'm escaping from this village. I don't think the way of escape is a solution to that. I would say the way is to open up the village, because sooner or later we will find out ourselves in another village, and the big metropolis could be another village as well, and the liberal milieu of you know, people could be a hideout also. Especially when you tend, you know, to escape beyond, you know, what is close, beyond the neighbors. You know, it's much difficult way to build coexistence with people who are very close to you. You know, you easier find yourself in more general European space and so on. I remember, you know, our about Central Europe because we should belong to Europe. So it was much easier for us in Poland, for example, to belong to Europe, you know, to go to Brussels, to Paris, and to talk then to overcome the village in our region, in our place we are living. So escape, I don't think, because now the effect of it is that the villagers around you are against Europe. They have many fears and tend to close even stronger among yourself. So because there was no culture of solidarity in the village, you know, there was somewhere else beyond this milieu, you know, in a big center, in metropolis. But the center should be in your village, you know, in your milieu, and that's the way to overcome this we and us.
Thank you so much, Krysztof, and thank you, Mike, for posing these questions. I'm sure we're going to have a whole week in lab also working through this, you know, ideas and possibilities. And so I have a question from Andre Wilkins, who we were able to hear at the beginning. He says, thank you for the inspiring talk. What could be new institutions of a culture of solidarity, something you talked about in the end, which are different to existing NGOs, EU, Council of Europe, and etc.?
I don't have, Andrea, really answer for that, really concept. It's very much open for me. But what I want to underline is to give the opportunity to think about what Germans, you know it very well, called Bildung. That there is an investment you do in opening the space, the possibilities, the grantings for building new institutions, not projects, not festivals. Having the same money, we can do much more for culture of solidarity, thinking about small institutions which employ people, build the team, develop the craft, and build small centers of the world. And you know, it's when you have all these ideas around culture of solidarity and so on, you will know how new laboratory of culture you should prepare to that. Why I'm saying about this, because we have now many institutions, and you are right, they are, you know, NGOs and so on. But sometimes, and being on that threshold, as my feeling is to think about this new development we're all trying to envisage in the future. It shouldn't be based on temporary projects and things that we should trust people, giving them capacity grants and opportunities to build institutions for long-term activities. And this is a huge lack in European sphere, especially with NGO movement. And you know it very much, very well, about, you know, short-term grantings, living from project to project. You can't do the culture of solidarity in that way. We should overcome this aporia with new philosophy of granting, of thinking about, you know, supporting culture in terms of institution buildings.
Thank you so much, Krysztof, for your reply. Chris, whenever you're ready, Chris will be posing a question live to you. He's one of our facilitators in the lab. Chris? Whenever you're ready.
Microphone is muted.
Yes.
Good morning, Krysztof. Very nice to see you again. It is just a beautiful experience to be able to listen to you as I've done so many times before. And one thing that struck me in your story is you point out the correspondence between solidarity and hospitality. Both of us have been hosts and guests many times in our lives. And I wonder, what do you think, how will hospitality change in these times of Corona, when borders are closing, when societies are looking inward, when people have even more reason to treat a stranger as a potential threat because they might be carrying the virus? Will this change us as a host and as a guest?
Thank you, Chris, for this question. And it comes back to me, to our experience with former Yugoslavia and the risk of being hospitable at that time, when divisions came so deeply, profoundly between families of different, you know, national origins or religions and so on. And suddenly, in a small village, you had a fear against a neighbor, or, you know, belonging to different nationalities, those shut doors and defending the family as a power of, you know, survival in difficult circumstances, and shut door against the people of other nationalities or religions. Imagine in Poland, people couldn't believe that it can happen, like in Yugoslavia, in Poland. And that was, I remember from that time, people saying what they are doing in the Balkans. It never could happen in Poland. And today, on the shops, we have these boards. Physicians are not allowed to come in. Old people are thrown out from the line to the shop because they are old and dangerous. And it happens in Poland. This fear, how it will influence our hospitality, of course, it will take it in the risk. And sometimes we will have to say we give up. It's beyond our capacities today. But at least we will understand that we are not enough strong to cope with that. That at least you will know that there is a lack of something. And in the long term, I think it deepens our understanding of hospitality. It needs courage, it needs responsibility, especially today, as always. So we should go deeply with understanding of hospitality, but it will work slow and slow after, if you will have culture for that. You know, if there will be possibility to work on that, I don't expect that it will happen immediately, that people will understand that we should this or another way be more hospitable today. But at least this feeling that we are not able, that we are too weak. It's a chance for a strong reaction in the long term, to be better prepared, to make all necessary changes in your life. So in the long, I think this crisis will at least, that's why we today talk about culture of solidarity, I think. Yes, because of course we feel that there is a crisis of hospitality and solidarity, but at the same time we are feeling that this is a problem. Yeah, that we can't omit it, that it is a kind of sickness which will poison our life. And sooner or better, we should find solutions. And to think about the culture of solidarity is exactly, to take the responsibility for all of that, and to help us people to have a culture who can help it. Who can. Of course, it's threatening. You close yourself in your hide. It's like you remember it from Yugoslavia, when you destroy the bridge in Moscow, the first thing after it, you start to think how to rebuild it, because life is unbearable without that. So if we lost hospitality, the next thing will be how to rebuild it, how to make it possible again, how to make it's available, for the people, and how to help each other to do it.
We'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chris. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you so much, Krysztof, for your answer. Always wonderful to hear, experts and great thinkers talking together. So the next question I have is from Chiara Giardi. And so she says, thank you very much for the keynote and the event. My question would be, is there or could there be anything European about solidarity? If so, what would that be? Alternatively, what does European solidarity mean? And isn't talking about European solidarity making others borders?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for this question, because it's very important for me to think about culture of solidarity in the context of Europe, in the context of integration, in building Europe of culture as a project. We have these political, economical projects, but we still have problems with having Europe as a culture common thing. And the problem itself, I think you feel it, is that we can understand specificity of European culture as the way of doing around it solidarity, and it has its own limitations, of course. And the way in which I understand Europe is, transcending borders, Europeanness, you cross borders, and all the time new borders. So I never would see the culture close to European borders, limbless from Greece. This is a civilization which we should somehow defend and define as ours. That Europeanness somehow means, and in other civilizations, languages probably have different names for that, to cross, to, extend, not. And of course, we know one way of it, is a colonizing, enriching your power and your imperium to the others, to the other lands and peoples and so on. That was how it happened in the past. When we talk about culture of solidarity, when we talk about you as a core for a new paradigm of culture, this extension would be rather critical, self-critical. It would be rather empathic. It would be rather to cope with colonial heritage, to rethink the ways how we understand culture in Europe, how we design sharp borders in Europe. Because very much the problems we have is with the modernization and the development of European civilization as well. So we inherited all that. So in the concept of culture of solidarity, this critical, self-critical attitude is very much part of it. As you've noticed, I didn't speak about demands of culture, people or other branches of our life, like politicians, economy, and so on. I think this is an inner work we should done among ourselves, among people of culture, very much critical work about the weaknesses or strong patterns we designed in the past, and the challenge for us is to change it from inside. And the same is with Europe. As you asked, I would expect that Europe will do this inner work on re-evaluating the concept of culture, of solidarity, and so on. Up the field of communication, dialogues with the other continents, cultures, and so on. So this is not time about the new expansion of our ideas. It's a time of co-feeling, cooperating, and this means that the part of our work in Europe, there are other cultures, other geographical dimensions, and so on, that we should do it in a very co-working way. And that's how I understand, Europe of culture, the integrational process based on cultures, that it will redefine the understanding of culture, will not be closed as European culture or any national culture, but European is also this, has this limitation, which will come to more open paradigm, which will give the room to feel at home, or to say this is also the people from India, Africa, or Colombia. And if not, it will mean that there is still a problem we face in Europe. And so it's like opening up from inside to the others, and creating this culture of solidarity, which will and problems.
Thank you so much, Krysztof, for your answer. And so if anyone would like to raise their digital hand now, feel free to do so. Chiara is thanking you for your reply. If not, do I hear somebody? Feel free to speak out. Okay, maybe while we wait for people to mobilize, so to say, I first want to apologize because, as you said, my brain was so stuck to the term borderline instead of borderland. And it's, although I knew what to say, but it's interesting, as you said, how our mind switches to the terminology that we're familiar with, in a bad sense, the borderlines as something. So, apologies for that. And I just wanted to say how, while you were talking, I was thinking in this, how, you wrote and you spoke a lot about heritage and honoring the heritage. But what is tricky, so to say, is that heritage and thinking about origin are usually something that's, the traditional framework uses as something that is firm, not flexible, something that is always existent. And it's, but at the same time, we want to honor that heritage and we want to honor that what happened in the past. And so to honor in the way that you spoke is about opening dialogue. And so the dialogue in that same traditional framework I mentioned earlier is perceived as, floaty, over compromising, something that's not solid, which is far from what's actually, true and something you spoke about. And so my question is, how can we dismiss this perceiving of tolerance and understanding and dialogue as being weak, which is definitely far from it? And so what would be the pedagogy to work with communities and people to transfer, as you said, I to we? What would be the mechanism into creating this perception of, co-working, cooperation as being strong, not weak, in the traditional thinking societies, perhaps?
Oh, it's a lot to say in response to you, Maria, but shortly I would only underline this attitude of involving people into common work as co-workers, co-creators. Also, nobody can do this for them, and nobody can do it taking them out or making them cut off, being cut off from the heritage and so on, from the memories. Sometimes we tend to say, oh, forget about that. Don't deal with all these memories, past and so on, because it only creates boundaries and problems, obstacles, but just go to the future. But my knowledge after working so many years with people is that it always stays with you. Yeah, also memories and heritage. So again, the only way is to open it up from inside together, and believe me that this will be not something new for them. This open format, this open pattern for culture, this is a deeply rooted thing in traditional culture. The modernity and the painful history close it up around national identities, for example, or religious or cultural identities. That's how modernity developed, on these sharp borders of who you are. And when I work, for example, to give you an example, in Indonesia, in Java, with the local community, which is Muslim, but they live close to Borobudur, Buddhist temple and some Hindu temples. Since years, they used to come to pray to these temples because they were sacred for them. And they did understand this open format of culture and religion. You leave all the difference on the threshold. yes, and you come in. No, but the young generation, very often educated in Western Europe universities, when they came back, they started to talk to them, what you are doing? You don't know who you are Muslims. You should go to mosques. This is not yours, this Buddhist shrine. And for me, what was rebellious in that was that it came from Western Europe. So I would always consider Western Europe as an open liberal format, for everything. But sometimes to see yourself from distance, you see how the modernity designed as sharp borders for our identities and so on. So you can, working in local community, you can refer to such things which are deeply, at the bottom in a deep memories or cultures of local communities, so to rely on something what is hidden, what is in kind of taboo, because there was no tools, no culture, no language to speak it out. We invented, the language of difference, of defending ourselves, not the language of bridging. I think it's very much the culture of solidarity is about inventing new language, as well as cultural rituals, practices, which make the solidarity events a part of cultural life. Yes, when you invite to the dialogue, to sharing, to co-production, others, and make it a public community event, not limited, to the margins, to the districts of this minority or another minority of our community, but making it as a common community holiday and ritual. So a lot of to do it comes like inventing new forms of culture practices, new languages, but deeply it is like reinventing, like taking it from the ground, from something what was. I was feeling like that, but I was ashamed to talk about that. Especially today after this pandemic, like after the war, you will be full of these languages and feelings to defend yourself, and it towards the gesture of sharing, openness, hospitality, and so on. And without culture, you can't do it. That's why culture matters. Because without that, if you not create a space, tools, practices, it is abandoned. It is, like an empty space, which on the margins are inhabited by, these heritage, nationalistic, very often narratives, around you as dominant one. Yes, when the center is weak, when you don't have an agora in a community for dialogues, for sharing, you have strong mahalas, in the Balkans, the strong districts, with the nationalistic narratives and the excluding others. Only the way of overcoming it is not eliminating mahalas, it's making agora stronger. And a strong center, the small center of the world, makes the boundaries weaker, outside boundaries. Otherwise, when you start to annihilate, to discredit themselves, to cut them off, that not makes the agora stronger. It's just an excuse. It's just an escape. Agora is not an escape. Agora is embracing the wholeness and taking responsibility for home.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate how you talked about, language and base, and I mean base as humanness, vulnerability being power, openness being strong. So thank you so much for that. I will, especially with the mahalas, I will marinate on this, later on during the day. And so now I have a question and we're slowly coming, towards the end of our Q&A. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, Viatautas, you will perhaps know this better. It says, thank you for your amazing keynote speech, Krysztof. For the conclusion, could you tell me more about ongoing or upcoming initiatives in Krasnogruda, and what a current situation of politics of culture in Poland, in your opinion? Last but not least, what you think about a future protest perhaps in Belarus? How ideas of Jerzy Giedroyc would be rethinked? Thank you.
Thank you, Vitautas, for these questions. Many things I have in response, but Jerzy Giedroyc it was an editor-in-chief of the magazine Kultura, published in Polish emigre circles in Paris, near Paris. But in fact, thank you for recalling him, because he is in charge of replacing this term cressy edges to the borderland, to more partnership with our mostly Eastern neighbors in Poland. And his ideas are still relevant, and I'm sure he would be very much concerned about what's going on today in Belarus. His way of making Poland stronger was a way to help Belarus to be independent and strong. So this is very much aligned, this philosophy of small centers of the world. It's, this is not to monopolize the power, be stronger from others, but to make them as strong as you are. And this is your power. The power of small center is lays in helping the others to be as strong as possible, as free as possible. So, for our interests, but also dreams, we should do all to help Belarus in that struggle, and to feel that this is our struggle for culture of solidarity. My dream, I would say, in what is going on in Krasnogruda, this is the place where we do have this international center for dialogue. My dream, and our Portland team dream, is to create something what I mentioned before, like an academy. But we do have it in short term. So we do have summer schools, seminars, symposia, workshops all over the year doing it here. But the dream would be to have it as a school that you can study, Maria, without us, as the diploma of the bridge builder. That there is a craft which we can develop as a university curriculum, and have it as a whole academy or university. You can study and have diploma in that. This is my dream. So to extending slowly from summer schools to longer term programs for which we can invite people to study for 2 years or maybe 4 years. This, which is like pedagogy and artistic capacities of the activists of culture for solidarity, of solidarity. That would be the dream and challenge for us in Krasnogruda.
Great, thank you so much, Krysztof. And Menno, do you want to say something, or do you want me to?
Yes, I see it's almost 1 o'clock, so I suppose we are ending this fantastic keynote speech. Thank you very much, Krysztof, for that. I just wanted to make one more time the connection to the project Culture Lab Europe Spaces for Solidarity by sharing my screen here and show you how people are responding to this speech in our online space. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
It's very nice to see. This is our roadmap, and if I go here to the main square, you can see one of the participants, Fran, who works for Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid, made this visual representation of what you have been talking about. And I liked it so much that I thought it's worth to share it with you. So you can see yourself back here in this live storytelling graphic picture. And I hope it represents for you what you say, and I hope also that we can continue to work in this fantastic graphic way on Miro. And that's the only thing I wanted to show. So Maria, I'm going to give back to you.
Thank you so much, Francisco, and thank you, Meno, for sharing this. Thank you, Krysztof, for, opening the lab, for giving such an insightful and really inspiring talk today. All the best in continuing work. I can't wait to follow up as you work forward. And to invite you and everyone, for tomorrow, we also have a second Q&A called Why We Need New European Media by Nathalie Nugarede. Hate me, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pronounce French as best as I can, but we're looking forward to hearing her from 11 to, as well as today till 1 p.m. So, join in with us tomorrow as well on our live streaming. Also, I'd like to invite everybody who can on this Friday, 26th of June, at 4:30 until 6:30 p.m. We're going to have Central European time. We're going to have public presentations from participants from the Cultural Lab and, Q&As on Initiative for Solidarity in European Public Space. With this, I want to say, again, thank you for everybody who's been a part of this lab, who will be a part of this lab. Thank you, Krysztof, once again. Andre for also opening up, and Meno as well for working so hard on making this forward. Have a lovely rest of the day, and we continue with the lab at 3:30 with our participants.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Francisco, for this lovely drawing.